Welcome back at IMPAKT TV for our last conversation of tonight. I'm very happy to have next to me Dan Forrest. You made it here pretty fast after the keynote lecture.
I'm actually out of breath because the thing was still, like the exit video was still going on, and I had to run up the stairs. I ran out the wrong way initially, so there was pandemonium. But I'm here.
And you came in dancing on Janelle Monáe, so that's a very good entrance.
They were playing PYNK, so how can you not,
right?
move your body?
Yes. I'll briefly introduce you again. Dan Forrest is actually my colleague at Utrecht University, where he works as an assistant professor in the Department of Media and Culture. He has taught courses on media studies, transmedia storytelling, critical theory, cultural analysis, and critical race theory. Dan Forrest has published in scholarly books and articles on science fiction, cultural studies, media theory, anti-capitalism, and popular culture, and zombies. And also writes frequently for more popular platforms like the Washington Post and the Los Angeles Review of Books. And in today's lecture performance, we heard more about your fascination for Janelle Monáe's work. Yeah. And because the festival's theme is modern love, I was wondering, was it love at first sight when you saw Janelle Monáe's work?
Absolutely. I've always been obsessed with different kinds of popular culture, mostly movies and TV. And so that became my field of work, of research and teaching and stuff like that. But pop music is I don't know, in a way music is even more close to you, in the way that you can endlessly listen to albums and stuff like that and watch music videos. And so the first time I saw one of her videos, that, incredible combination of hugely accessible, contemporary, pop, R&B, soul, hip-hop as a kind of mixture, her abilities as a performer and the way she has this really rare quality that you see in performers like Prince or David Bowie, where they're just so charismatic and they're so flexible and Sorry, I can go on. But yes, it was definitely love at first sight. And she does this with science fiction. So she does these different music videos all have some kind of science fictional element about whether it's time travel or it's genetic cloning or it's androids or it's flying cars. There's all this stuff, and I have this lifelong obsession with that as well. So all those things clicked into place, and it was definitely love at first sight. Yeah.
And how is it to be at your show?
Oh man, I can't even begin. So most recently I saw her perform twice at the Paradiso in Amsterdam. And somehow, as luck would have it, I had to be in the building that afternoon for a meeting about a lecture or something like that. And because the thing was, she was going to perform in one of those big stadiums in Amsterdam, those big concert halls, but she really wanted to go to the Paradiso because it has this mystique and it's this small space. But the show that she was touring with was designed for a much larger stage. So I got there around 4, and she was with her band. They were going through every number, rehearsing it, because everything had to be adapted for the smaller stage. And I was sitting there. We were up in the higher levels of the building, and we were trying to talk about, I was going to do a talk on Frankenstein or something. It was the 200th anniversary of Frankenstein. They wanted me to give a talk on it. So we were talking, we'll talk about, feminism, and I'll talk about post-humanism and blah, blah, blah. And all the time I'm just going crazy because I'm hearing, her and her band right there, right in the next big room, playing their song. So after 20 minutes, I said, "I'm sorry, I can't just sit here. Can I please go stand on the balcony?" I just, so I saw her rehearse the show. Then I went out to dinner, came back and saw her perform the show. And then the next night, I came back again and saw the show again. And it was just amazing. It was just amazing because I think in that small space, having that kind of intimacy, with the audience, worked wonders for what she was doing. It was a very, it's a big show with dance and, and 5 dancers on the stage and a lot of choreography and stuff like that. But it also felt very, it just felt very intimate and very, so, it was just so, virtuoso, I guess is the word. She was like, my God, she can do anything. She can dance, she can sing, she can write. Yeah. I'm a fan. If you hadn't,
I had an idea. Yeah, and I think what you mentioned there, this virtuoso and her specialty. I think one of the most interesting things about the artist is how she both manages to reach a huge audience. She does that also through mainstream platforms.
Yeah.
But also she is very revolutionary, innovative, doing something completely new, and also very much questioning gender norms.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think that's like, for me, that was really it's kind of a unique combination of elements. I mean, there are Black women artists who do, many of them, who do amazing work, but most of them that do that kind of work are in a particular kind of almost subcultural niche. You know, they're either really in the avant-garde of cultural production, or they're in one very particular genre, like R&B or something like that. Or in some cases, like Beyonce, they become like so oversized that, you know, even the things that they do that are kind of exciting and kind of, you know, triggering or something like that are kind of moderated. You know, like the rough edges have kind of been removed. And I think one of the interesting things about Janelle Monáe's work is that once she's very uncompromising in her the way that she views what her music and her art should be. And she has found ways to just move that forward as part of a collective as well. So she's always showing like, this is not work that I'm doing on my own. I need my Wonderland arts collective around me. I need a space to develop this in. It's a collective work. It's a collective act. And we're drawing on energies that are social and political and that are everywhere around us, and trying to use her growing celebrity and visibility to channel them in directions that are really provocative, without making them, you know, which I think are really radical, but contained within music that is so accessible and that you can really dance to, and, you know, that you can listen to without really responding to the lyrics if you listen to them very stupidly, you know, but that are just, you know, so I think that's a unique combination of things that she does that makes her a good example of how creative artists can not just, you know, that you can't just like apply theoretical concepts to them, but they are in a way theorists. They're doing theoretical work through their, you know, through their music and through their performance.
And maybe to move on that notion of the theoretical work that you're doing, you have written a lot about world making in relation to Monáe's work. Could you expand a bit on how you see that?
Well, so world making and world building are things that we generally, I mean, we see a huge amount of it because the dominant genres in our popular culture right now are, you know, science fiction and fantasy and horror and stuff like that. And those are all genres where, you know, you're engaged with characters and narratives, but you're also always sort of relating them to, okay, what are the rules of this world? I mean, how is this world different from ours? And I think most people tend to think of that as being a kind of escapism. So, you know, you go, you know, you read Tolkien or you read the Game of Thrones books or watch the show in order to sort of remove yourself from where you are, as if you're no longer thinking about, you know, who you are and what power is and those kinds of things. But I think it's actually the opposite. I think, in fact, when we watch, you know, art house films, you know, we watch them through a kind of very critical lens in which we like them if we see our beliefs sort of, you know, return to us, and we don't like them if we don't. But we're really looking at them, trying to make that kind of ideological meaning out of them. But with pop music and with, you know, popular culture, with, you know, when you sit down over Christmas to watch the Harry Potter films, you're not really, you know, interpreting them in the same way. In fact, they're inviting you to kind of sit back and like, here's this wonderful world for you to enter and hang out in, and please don't think too much about it, right? And so I think that, in fact, with world building presents this opportunity to really, it's always about reproducing elements that we're familiar with and that feel very, you know, at an emotional level, very recognizable to us. And most of the time is in very problematic ways. So, you know, we watch, as I was saying in the lecture, you know, you watch Tolkien and you're like, wait, you know, this is really a kind of white supremacist universe that we're in, where, you know, there's a very essentialist idea about gender and about ethnicity and those kind of culture. So it's not that comfortable to think about. And I think what Afrofuturists do, and what Janelle Monáe does very specifically, is build worlds where it's really not, they're constructed upon the problems of the past, right? So they're confronting you with this collision between a history of, you know, imperialism, misogyny, homophobia, you know, all the different forms of oppression that we can recognize, but do them in symbolic ways. And then from that history, they project a future that is always about finding ways to escape this, finding ways to liberate yourself. And I think that's such an inspiring and productive way of doing world building that I thought that would make a good basis for, a book where you're not being a cultural critic saying the things you like are actually quite bad for you, which is what a lot of us really do.
But it's more like embodying that critique and...
Yes, and finding an artist who's not somebody who's just in galleries or things like that, where you can say, this is an amazing feminist doing amazing work. Yes, for a very, very small audience. But this is one of these rare figures who's out there in, the big world doing this for a huge, she's not Beyonce big, but she's somewhere and she's moving in that direction, So it's reaching so many people, and her focus on activism is something that has also grown in as along with her world building.
Yes. Well, I think we still have a lot to talk about, but I also need to end up. So
already?
Thanks so much, Dan, for joining us.
Thank you, Rosa. It's been we used to share an office, and now here we are again at the same table.
Exactly.
This is lovely.
And I would like to introduce a final part of today's festival. Because Modern Love wouldn't be complete without a dating show, let's be honest. So what we're bringing you is Melanie Bonayo and their Skinship Collective, who will bring you into the hot mess of online dating and through a participatory dating show for queers and the respectful curious beyond the binary. You can choose your own host who will take you along in a queer world of dating, and you can expect touch tutorials, erotic self-dance, and celebrating the end of toxic relationships. Have you become curious? Make sure to scan the QR code or go to skinshipdatingshow.impact.nl. Saying it one more time.
Skinshipdatingshow.impact. That's a mouthful right there.
Exactly. Right. Skinshipdatingshow.impact.nl or scan the QR code. And then you can participate and have a very eventful, end of the evening. Thank you so much, and we'll see you again at the next IMPAKT TV.